The world's greatest challenge. You may wonder, what was the world's greatest challenge? Well, let me tell you, when they say the world's greatest challenge, it was the greatest. It all started with the Great Depression and World War II. The Great Depression occurred after World War I. Uneven distribution of wealth, overproduction, decreasing demand of goods, and the stock market crash were the main factors to why the Great Depression occurred. There was no money for working class citizens, goods were being produced too quickly, farmers were forced to foreclosure by the banks, and people lost jobs and bought fewer goods because the factories and farms were cutting back on production. Unfortunately, the Great Depression led to a global depression. American banks were removing loans and investments from Europe, and the world trade dropped when the U.S. set off a chain reaction of high tariffs. Because of the Great Depression, money was low for families. Some families had to send their children off to another family member because they couldn't support them. It was hard for people to get jobs also. And even if you had a job, you didn't get paid a lot. People were demoralized by hard times because they lost their will to survive. Suicide rates rose more than 30%. Moving on from the Global Depression, we have the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl lasted 7 years. It occurred in Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Dust Bowl was caused by windstorms and caused soil erosion and drought. The crops were destroyed, which left the earth dry and cracked. Because of it, people ended up in the streets, lost jobs, and to keep warm, they used newspapers to fend off the cold. Franklin D. Roosevelt was the man to help the U.S. out of all this mess. He became the president in 1933. He was a polio victim, but that didn't stop him. He created the New Deal, which were new laws and programs to help the U.S. The New Deal included relief, help Americans, recovery, get business and banks back on their feet, and reform. Fix the system so crash won't happen again. Those are the 3 R's. There were a lot of programs and laws such as the AA, AAA, CCC, and CWA that helped the U.S. get out of depression. New Deal didn't end Great Depression, but it gave us hope. The Dust Bowl and Great Depression led to World War II. Global depression was one of the reasons we went to war, but the rise of dictators also caused World War II. There were numerous leaders that came up. Some included Hitler, Mussolini, Juan and Eva Perón, and General Francisco Franco. The reason why these leaders came up was because of the economic devastation which made the countries vulnerable to take over. The U.S. was not trying to get involved in World War II, but they received a surprise attack from Japan. On December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor was bombed by Japan. The U.S. didn't know they were going to get attacked because Japan never declared war, which made it a surprise attack. This is what caused the U.S. to go to war. After Pearl Harbor, though, the U.S. was ready to fight. They went to war with the Japanese in 1941, which was the Pacific War. Japanese armed forces launched a massive offensive attacking targets as far as east as Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The goal was to create what the Japanese called the Greater East Asia Cooperative Sphere, which means they would have access to the substantial and national oil and rubber. This war helped end the long-lasting World War II. During World War II, though, unemployment vanished, which would end the Great Depression. Rubber, oil, and tin would become scarce. Taxes were up, and ration books were given to families with a certain amount of value on them. Now, you tell me that wasn't a challenge for the U.S. There was a lot of fighting in Europe, like the Battle of Dunkirk that occurred May through June 1940. It was when British ships saved other 300,000 Allied troops from German attacks on France. Also, there was the Allied Air War dominated Europe by 1944. There was the carpet bombing, which killed 40,000 people in one day in Harrisburg. And then we have Germany surrenders and victory in Europe begins because U.S. and Russian troops gained up and pushed on into Berlin. Then there was the Holocaust by Hitler. The Holocaust was the mass murder of Jews under German Nazi regime during the period of 1941 to 45. Hitler would have his men kill the Jews in any way he could, starving them, putting them into ovens and showers where poison gas was suffocating them. Hitler did this because he was being defeated in the wars, so the Holocaust was his final solution. United Nations were handed down the territory by the British in 1948, and during this time, Israel was declared a state by the Jewish settlers because they say that the UN control was weak. Israel was very unwelcome in the Arabian Middle East because many Palestinians felt that the land was taken from them. This led to war after war. And then lastly, on August 6, 1945, an atomic bomb flashed over the city Hiroshima. Everybody was just doing what they had to do for the day, which is like their daily chore or whatever. But all of a sudden, a bright light shot across the sky. This bomb killed hundreds of people, just people who weren't involved in the war, just civilians in the city Hiroshima. The people who survived their lives were forever changed by the bombing.